So changing a little subjects, you said you start with WCW, kind of got
Yeah.
into WWF, but let's go into a little bit of a, I don't want to say, top five, but what were some of your, what were some of your favorite moments? What blew your mind, whether it was kid Soto, college Soto, what were some moments of wrestling that stuck with you that you loved?
It definitely the old matches with Steamboat and Savage. I mean, those are some of the like when I think about pinnacle '80s wrestling, I think about that. But I also think about Sting versus Ric Flair and the 80 million times that they went against each other too. Um, love the moment. It's an iconic moment of Stone Cold Steve Austin bleeding from his fucking face in the sharpshooter,
Hmm.
and doesn't give up. He just passes out, and that's how he loses to Bret Hart. That's kind of like, I feel like what started Stone Cold's kind of ascent was that Stone Cold was a heel.
Yep,
He
that was
was,
the double turn. That's what they called it. That's when Stone Cold became good and Bret Hart actually became bad or
but
heel.
like,
So, yeah,
Stone Cold didn't change the way that he was. Like the audience just decided to
love him.
like love him
Yeah,
because Bret Hart was like the face.
yeah, he was the good
Like
guy,
Bret
the
Hart's
do good a
always
good
been the
time.
face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, but like the face, people started to get bored of that. And I think The Rock had a very similar kind of thing too. He first came on as Rocky Maivia, and he was a face, and everybody hated him.
Die
And then he
Rocky
was like,
Die.
"Well,
Yep.
fuck it." Yeah, he's like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna be a heel." And his heel persona was so charismatic, even though he was an asshole, that people were like, "I fucking love this guy." And he was way more interesting. So the Stone Cold one. Again, the Shawn Michaels Bret Hart, like that championship thing was great. I love DX as well. Hulk Hogan coming out, um, and turning into Hollywood Hulk Hogan, and then you see Scott Hall and Kevin Nash on WCW. That was like a huge moment for me, because I had heard that that might happen, and then when it actually happened on WCW, like that changed the whole entire game.
Hmm.
When NWO showed up, and it kind of like it showed that wrestling was scripted, and it was like the first time it was like, okay, these characters that you loved, known as Diesel and Razor Ramon, are now Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. Wait, they have real names?
Yep.
Wait, what? And now they're bad guys, and now they're invading WCW, and they're pretending to be bad guys. I mean, dude, it was perfect. I mean, the only thing that wasn't perfect about it really was the fact that Hulk Hogan got involved. Because, like, I never, again, Hulk Hogan to me is like one of the least cool wrestling guys. I know that you grew up with him, but he's just one of the least cool like icons. He wasn't a very good wrestler like Bret Hart was, or even Shawn Michaels in the day, or even oh my God,
He
Chris
wasn't as good as the
Benoit.
majority of people. Yeah. I mean, but
No, I
he
mean he
he
had
was the character.
charisma, but
Yeah.
like he had only a couple of different fucking moves. He would give you the boot at the end. Well, first of all, he would like all of a sudden be impervious to damage at the
Hmm.
end of the match once he got nice and sweaty, and then he would put you against the ropes, give you a boot to the face, and give you a leg drop, and then that was the formula. So yeah, I mean, those are the moments that I think about. There's so many moments, but those are the ones that jump out the most. I remember Sting coming back as the Crow too, which to this day I really don't understand. I like the Crow and everything, but I don't understand why Sting went from Surfer Boy to the Crow. But here we are. So those are my
Yeah.
moments.
Dark times. Yeah. Uh, for me, like I remember a few again growing up, because obviously I know Hogan and Andre, but I didn't follow it up until then. It didn't really grasp the big moment at the time. Again,
Hmm.
but the fun it's little moments that always stuck with me, and it's not even like the major ones that a lot of people talk about that happened because I like you I remember the Hogan Warrior match, that was huge, Hogan Savage, but I one of my like I said I remember the Royal Rumble and starting the very first one, and then it was on pay-per-view, and I remember it was the first pay-per-view one, when they kind of figured things out. And it was like, and I know this is so stupid because yes, it is scripted, but like Demolition was one of my favorite tag teams, and Axe came out first, and Smash came out second, and my little mind blew. I'm like, they're on the same team. What are they gonna? And then they just start fighting, and I'm like, holy shit, because they wanted to set that anyone can win. It was every man for himself. So I
Yeah,
always remember that moment because they made a big deal of it on TV, and I just was like, holy shit, because I
yeah.
was like, they're on the same team, and so I always loved that moment. I will admit I was into very cheesy characters growing up. I mean, I know I said Hulk Hogan, but I did like Macho Man, but I loved Brutus
Love
the
Macho
Barber
Man.
Beefcake.
Oh,
I
he's great
loved
too.
Red Rooster, but when Brutus Barber Beefcake gave Mr. Perfect his first loss, that was huge
Oh
for me because
yeah,
he was my favorite wrestler. I'm like, oh my god, Brutus won because it was Mr. Perfect. So
Mr.
yeah, there's
Fucking Perfect.
and I love the original Survivor Series, just the 5-on-5, just random, kind of teams and stuff like that. That I love that concept. I think they got away from it for a while. They still throw it in, but because that was on Thanksgiving. Survivor Series was a Thanksgiving pay per view at first,
Oh,
just to
it's
give
awesome.
families to watch.
Hmm.
And you're seeing, like Hogan teaming up with like Bam Bam, guys he would normally never team up with. Um, so I was a big fan. But yeah, so growing up, I always remember the little things. As WCW, and I kind of got into that, though it's not talked about much, anymore because I was a huge Benoit fan. I was huge, Guerrero
Yeah.
fan. The
Hmm.
guys that, the hardcore wrestlers who wrestled, you know what I mean? Like could put on a show.
Yeah.
Technical, that's the word I'm looking for. The
Hmm.
technical. I fell in love with the little guys, even though to me they're huge. They're bigger than me, but you know what I mean. In the
Yeah,
wrestling
of
where they're
course.
little. Um, so when like Benoit won at WrestleMania and Hug Guerrero, that was a huge moment for me.
Hmm.
But yeah, WCW at the NWO was great until they just added everybody.
Oh,
Like
I
it's just there
know.
was just so many people, and then it got to the point where it's like because at first, yeah, even if you're not a Hogan fan, like that was a big moment. That whole Nash and Hall comment was a big moment, but yeah, when it was just like everyone was on the NWO.
And
But
then NWO Wolfpack, like there was like splinter factions and shit like that.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it
and
was
they didn't do it
so
well.
fucking dumb, dude. It's that's what led to like the WCW WWF thing, which we touched upon earlier. Yeah, that's to me, and I still kept watching afterwards, but you need to have competition. Like that's what made these two companies great, was that they were going against each other and trying to one up each other. But then once they merged, there was no incentive for WWF to get any better, and it
Hmm.
shows. It's like it showed. Like, yeah, I did not look. I stopped watching even before the John Cena era. No idea about it. CM Punk, I'm aware of CM Punk. Now he's old. Whatever. I didn't
Well, he's
watch it.
technically my age, so thanks, but
Yeah, I mean, well, he
like a
just tore
year
his
older, a year
tricep,
younger.
so
Yeah,
yeah. So I mean, like, I don't. I there's just it becomes so predictable. And when you have a company that doesn't have to get better, like WWF doesn't have to, or WWE doesn't have to get any better than what it is, because there's not really any sort of competition. Like, yeah, okay, I guess AEW, but like that's not really moving the
competition.
needle
Yeah.
that much. You know what I mean? People get, they love a brand, they grew up with the brand. Obviously, we've grown up with brands too, so we get it, but that's kind of like when it was like really cool to see those things. Oh my God, everybody go on one show or the other and then merge, but it really fucking ruined the product for me overall.
No, you're right because without the competition, they could just put on whatever they want, and
And they
yeah,
have.
obviously they made Cena their new poster
Hmm.
boy, their new Hogan, their new Shawn Michaels. He was basically the face, which is good,
Hmm.
and that's when it, I guess, more transitioned to what they call the PG era. And don't get me wrong, what Cena's done for the kids and stuff has been great. The Make a Wish and all that shit. But you're right, the brand itself. I mean, I was when he first joined us, I was a huge CM Punk fan out of anyone just because he was from Chicago. That was about it. I'm like, all right, I'll root for this guy at first. I didn't know. I just remembered his promo and he's just talking about Chicago. I'm like, I'm in. I like you.
Yeah.
You could be, but yeah, there wasn't too many memorable things. Like nothing that I was like, God, not like as a kid or even like I said, WCW when they did the initial war games and shit. Now, all that era was just like, everything just seemed on repeat. And it did get old. I did still
Hmm.
watch it a little bit. There's, some fun parts here and there, but overall, it was just like, yeah, no, no. I'm like, I'm done. I think it just came a time. I don't know when I stopped watching. I'm like, and I don't miss it. I kind of, like you said, I saw, oh, Cody
I'll
Rhodes
miss
won
it.
back to
Yeah.
back Rumbles, seeing Punk tore his triceps sucks, blah blah blah. I did watch AEW a little here and there when it first started just to check it out. Um, Especially when CM Punk, joined, I'm like, all right, it's the first time in 10 years. I'm like, let's see what he's got to say. But overall, it's like I didn't stick with it. Um, but yeah, it's definitely not the same. I think growing up, like I said, I know I grew my biggest. I was more of a fan of the golden era. Had the attitude era, and those are two big
Hmm.
eras. I think just after that, once the WCW WWE thing just became one, yeah, yeah, it wasn't the
I,
same. I just
I mean,
couldn't get I
yeah,
can't get into it. Yeah.
I can't get into it now. And like you said, the golden era and then the in between era between that and attitude era are fantastic. Um, but for me, I just started watching sports. Um, and then it's like sports, you can have your opinion about it, and it's fine to have your opinion about sports. But, when their real life sometimes is way more interesting than a scripted thing. Like a scripted thing that just happens over and over and over again, and you've seen it happen since you were 8 years old. I still see shit in sports, whether it's baseball, football, or basketball, like I've never seen before. And shit can happen like at any time in sports. And so I kind of just went more that route to kind of like replace like the kind of itch that WWF used to give me or WCW because, back then in those matches, you did feel like there was some desperation. There was some great setup to these storylines. Um, I remember Bret Hart going against Mr. Perfect and beating him for the Intercontinental Belt for the first time, and that was a great match. Um, fuck, even Jake the Snake letting his fucking python bite fucking Randy Savage's arm and stuff was
Oh, that was not
fucking
supposed to
interesting.
happen though. That was
No, but
not
like
the
even
way.
that was interesting.
That was
It's like it's
scary as shit as a
unpredictable.
kid.
Yeah, of course, but it's unpredictable and now it's just whatever. So again, as I moved more into, sports, and I'm not trying to say real in a negative way because I understand that wrestling is very real when it comes to the bumps that you take. When it comes to these guys, I used to be a humongous ECW fan back in the day too, like real ECW, like pre WWF bullshit. Like ECW was like as raw as it fucking gets, violent. Storylines weren't there, but it was just like ultra violent wrestling, and it was absolutely fantastic. So I'm not saying that wrestling is not real per se, but as far as interesting goes, it's just gotten less and less interesting. And like you said, I have no interest to like start it up again. Um, there would have to be a humongous sea change or something like that for me to even consider it. With the amount of stuff that we have in our lives, right? Like where we are, we're trying to cram video games, we're trying to cram the 2 movies we watch every 6 months, um, and everything else that we do. I don't have space in my life to then include having to religiously follow fucking wrestling.
For like 5, 6, 7 hours, depending on how many shows you
I
watch as well.
can't,
Yeah,
dude. I can't.
no,
It's not that. It's just not. I'm not there. And it doesn't do anything for me right now. But I have ridiculously fond memories, and I would rewatch old school pay-per-views like in a heartbeat, and rewatch some of that stuff because that stuff was legit quality. Um, I don't know. I'm sure there are people that are going to listen to this and say, no, the wrestling is good now, and that's fine. I admittedly don't know what's going on, and I haven't for like 10, 15 years. Um, but it just doesn't look interesting to me. That's all.
yeah, and we just grown with our times, and yeah, people are enjoying the new wave. The kids are growing up with
Yeah.
these athletes nowadays, and it will change. Even 10 years from now, it will be something totally new, and who knows? Maybe I will get hooked on it another day or kind of start watching it. But yeah, you're right. I mean, between gaming and football and all this other shit, it's like I'll read, like I said, I'll read. I'll be like, okay, anything interests
Oh, of
me. If
course.
there's something, I'll like, oh, maybe I'll watch this one segment. But overall, I'm like, I'm not going to waste my time. I can't nowadays. I sound like an old man. I do miss the old days, but that's what it was then. I love the gimmicks. I think that was just me. I was big on that.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it was just characters, and I think we kind of joked about it during
Yes.
the over the top review. I'm like, these are over the top characters, and they're meant to be that way,
Yeah.
and that was what made them
Uh-huh.
fun. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's great.
uh, all right, well, for anyone that's still listening, let us know, what was your favorite era of wrestling? Do you still watch it? Anything? What's your favorite moments or anything like that? But until next time, I'm tapping out.
The cream of the crop.